The corridor of the alien warship was built to intimidate. The walls were tall and curved inward slightly, like they were closing in on anyone who walked there. Cold blue lights ran along the ceiling in straight lines. The metal floor reflected everything like dark water. Every step echoed. At the end of the corridor stood a massive alien war commander. His name was Charon Vex. Across many star systems, his name meant one thing: victory. He wore full war armor, layered in black metal and glowing psion energy lines. The suit was not just protection, it was a symbol. The armor had survived plasma cannons, orbital strikes, and heavy human artillery. Nothing had broken it. Around him stood human prisoners and alien soldiers. No one spoke. The humans were civilians from a captured colony station, workers, engineers, families. They had been forced into the corridor to watch. Charon Vex enjoyed demonstrations. He stepped forward slowly. Each movement of his armored boots sounded heavy and final. In front of him stood a single human girl. She looked no older than 16. Her name was Mira Hale. She wore simple civilian clothing, no armor, no weapon, no protection. Her dark hair was tied back loosely. Her hands were empty, her breathing steady. She did not look like a soldier. She did not look afraid. That annoyed Charon Vex. "You are the one," he said, his voice deep and metallic through his helmet. The alien soldiers had captured her earlier that day. Surveillance footage had shown something strange during a previous skirmish. A brief moment, a flash, an armored alien falling backward. No one believed it. Until now. Charon circled her slowly. "They say," he continued, "that you touched one of my warriors." Mira said nothing. "They say his armor cracked." The alien soldiers laughed softly. "Impossible," one muttered. Charon stopped directly in front of her. "My armor," he said, spreading his arms slightly, "is the strongest war technology in this sector. It cannot be pierced. It cannot be broken." He leaned down slightly, towering over her. "You are human, fragile, soft, divided." The humans watching lowered their eyes. Mira did not. She looked straight at him, not with anger, not with pride, just focus. Charon raised his armored hand and grabbed a nearby human man by the collar. He lifted him easily off the ground. "This is your species," he said loudly. "Weak." He threw the man aside. The body hit the metal floor hard. Gasps filled the corridor. Mira's jaw tightened slightly. Charon noticed. Emotion. Predictable. He stepped closer to her. "If you have power," he said, "show me." The alien soldiers formed a circle around them, weapons ready, watching. Mira finally spoke. "You don't understand how it works," she said, quietly. The soldiers laughed again. Charon tilted his head. "Then explain," he said. Mira looked at his chest plate. The center core of his armor glowed faintly with energy flow. "It's not about force," she said. Charon's helmet sensors scanned her body. No weapons, no visible tech. He straightened. "Strike," he ordered. One of his soldiers stepped forward and aimed a weapon at the humans behind Mira. "If you do nothing," Charon said calmly, "they die." The weapon powered up with a rising hum. Mira's breathing slowed. Her fingers twitched slightly. Charon raised his armored fist. "Show me," he repeated. And then he attacked. His fist came down fast, far faster than something his size should move. Gasps echoed through the corridor, but Mira stepped forward, not back, forward. She lifted her right hand, not in defense, not in a punch. She placed her palm flat against the center of his chest plate. For a single second, nothing happened. The alien soldier smirked. The weapon behind her continued charging. Then, a sharp sound cracked through the corridor, like ice breaking on a frozen lake. Charon froze. His helmet lights flickered violently. Mira did not move her hand. Another crack. Thin lines spread outward at the point of contact, across the chest plate, across the shoulder plates, across the arm segments. The glowing scion lines flickered violently. "Impossible," one alien whispered. The cracks deepened. Then, the armor shattered. Not dented, not damaged, shattered. Metal fragments exploded outward in a burst of sparks and broken plates. Energy discharged in bright flashes. The corridor lights flickered again. The warship was still, and every being in that hallway understood something new. Humans were not fragile. They were unpredictable. And sometimes, all it took was a touch. Charon stumbled backward, not in strategy, in uncertainty. For the first time in many years, he did not know what would happen next, and that scared him more than pain ever could. The corridor lights flickered again. The warship was still, and every being in that hallway understood something new. Humans were not fragile. They were unpredictable. And sometimes, all it took was a touch. The corridor did not return to normal, even after the broken armor stopped falling, even after the alarms began flashing red along the walls, even after soldiers raised their weapons again. Something had changed. Charon Vex stood in the center of the shattered metal pieces that had once covered his body. Without the armor, he looked smaller, not weak, but no longer invincible. The glowing core fragments on the floor slowly dimmed. His breathing was loud now, real. Mira stood a few steps away from him. She did not attack. She did not move closer. She simply watched. Alien soldiers surrounded her instantly, weapons aimed at her head, her chest, her heart. "Do not move," one shouted. Mira raised her hand slowly. She did not resist. Charon lifted one hand to stop his soldiers from firing. "Alive," he said. His voice was quieter now, controlled, but underneath it there was something else, doubt. Two soldiers grabbed Mira's arms tightly. They expected her to fight. She didn't. They escorted her down the corridor. The humans she had protected stared at her as she passed. Some looked hopeful. Some looked confused. Some looked afraid. Mira did not look back. Behind her, engineers rushed toward Charon. They scanned the broken armor pieces. They checked the damage. One engineer knelt beside a chest plate fragment. "It's not melted," he said slowly. "Not pierced." Another scanned it again. "The molecular bonds collapsed," she whispered. Charon turned his head sharply. "Explain." The engineer swallowed. "The internal structure destabilized. It failed from inside." "That is impossible," Charon said immediately. The engineer did not answer, because it wasn't impossible anymore. It had just happened. Mira was taken to a containment chamber deep inside the warship. The room was small, smooth walls, no sharp edges, no tools, no visible technology. A transparent energy barrier sealed the doorway. She sat on the floor quietly. Outside, officers watched through a reinforced window. "She must have hidden tech," one said. "Scan her again." They scanned her body for implants, for weapons, for radiation.
Nothing. Completely human. Inside the chamber, Mira closed her eyes. Her fingers moved slightly against the floor, like she was listening. In the command room, tension filled the air. Holographic displays replayed the corridor event again and again. Slow motion, zoomed angles, energy analysis overlays. Every version ended the same way. Touch, crack, collapse. Karen stood at the center of the room, now wearing a simple command suit. Without armor, his presence felt different, less untouchable. "Run structural analysis," he ordered. The chief scientist activated a large display. The armored shield grid was stable, no external overload. She paused. Something interfered with the frequency alignment. Karen narrowed his eyes. "From outside?" "No," she said. "From inside." Silence. "That is not possible without direct systems access," one officer argued. The scientist hesitated. "She had direct access," she said quietly. They all looked at her. "She touched it." Hours passed. The alien empire continued moving through space. But inside, everything felt slower. Alien soldiers whispered in private corridors. "She didn't use a weapon. She just touched him. That armor survived orbital fire. What if humans have evolved?" Rumors moved faster than orders, and rumors were dangerous because the alien empire's power was built on superiority. If that belief cracked, everything cracked. Inside the containment chamber, Mira finally opened her eyes. She looked at the smooth metal wall in front of her. She slowly placed her hand against it. Nothing happened. She frowned slightly. Not every metal responded the same way. It wasn't magic. It was pattern, energy, frequency. She had felt it when she touched the armor, the hum inside it, the unstable rhythm. Alien technology was advanced, but rigid. It followed strict patterns. Earth had never been stable. Earth had storms, magnetic chaos, radiation waves, unpredictable fields. Humans adapted to noise. Aliens optimized for order. That was the difference. Footsteps approached the chamber. The energy barrier lowered briefly. Karen entered alone. The barrier sealed behind him. He stood a few steps away from her. No armor, no weapons, just a sidearm at his belt. "You will explain," he said calmly. Mira looked up at him. "You won't understand," she replied. His jaw tightened. "Try." She studied him for a moment. "You build systems to resist force." "Yes." "You layer shields, reinforce materials, increase density." "Yes." "And you assume attacks come from outside." He frowned slightly. "And?" She slowly stood up. "You never prepare for disruption." Karen's eyes narrowed. "What are you?" "Human," she repeated. He stepped closer. "Humans are divided. You fight each other." "Yes," she said. "Then why are you not divided now?" She held his gaze. "Because you attacked us." That answer lingered in the air. Karen studied her face carefully. She did not look angry. She looked certain. "You think you can win?" he asked. Mira shook her head. "No." That surprised him. "We don't win wars like you do," she continued. "We survive them." Karen felt something uncomfortable inside his chest. He did not like it. "You destabilized my armor. Can you do it again?" Mira did not answer, which was answer enough. Back in the command room, alerts began flashing. Human ships were approaching the outer sector. Small ships, small, not war cruisers, fast, scattered. Karen returned quickly. "Interception units ready," an officer reported. But something strange happened. As the alien ships powered weapons, their targeting systems flickered briefly. Just a flicker. Engineers frowned. Minor glitch, nothing serious. But Karen remembered the cracks in his armor. Minor disruptions could become collapse. He looked at the corridor recording again, the moment before the crack. Mira's fingers had barely pressed against the chest plate. No visible force, just contact. He zoomed in further. Her eyes had been closed for half a second, like she was listening to something. Karen felt it clearly now. This was not brute strength. This was adaptation. And adaptation was more dangerous than power. Because power can be measured, adaptation cannot. He turned toward the containment chamber monitor. Mira sat quietly again, calm, not afraid, as if she knew something they did not. For the first time since commanding fleets, Karen Vex felt uncertainty. Not about battle, about understanding. The human girl had not just shattered armor, she had shattered assumption. And assumption was the foundation of their empire. Outside the warship, human ships continued moving, small, silent, learning. Inside the containment chamber, Mira whispered softly to herself, "You shouldn't have forced us to adapt." Because humans did not win through strength, they won through change. And once they started changing, there was no stopping it.
The alien empire did not hide weakness. It erased it. By the next cycle, the footage of Karan's shattered armor had already spread through lower ranks, not officially, quietly, shared between soldiers, replayed in hidden corners of the warship. That could not continue. Karan Vex understood this clearly. If doubt grew inside the fleet, war would become harder. So he made a decision. They would turn the moment into proof. Not proof of human power, proof of alien dominance. Mira would be tested publicly. The warship's main arena chamber was activated for the first time in years. It was massive, circular, surrounded by tiered platforms where soldiers and officers could watch. A transparent shield covered the ceiling, revealing the dark stretch of space outside. At the center of the chamber stood a reinforced platform. Mira stood on it. Her hands were bound with energy restraints, not tight enough to hurt, tight enough to limit movement. Alien soldiers filled the viewing platforms, weapons secured, eyes focused. Karan stepped forward onto the main platform opposite her. His new armor was different, thicker, layered with additional stabilizers. The chest core now glowed a deeper red. He had not simply replaced the armor, he had redesigned it. "This demonstration," Karan announced loudly, his voice echoing through the chamber, "will correct misunderstanding." Silence fell. "The human destabilized my previous armor. A flaw has been corrected." Mira watched him quietly. "This time," Karan said, "there will be no flaw." The restraints around Mira's wrists deactivated. She rubbed her wrists gently. "You may attempt again," Karan said. He stepped closer. "If you succeed, the prisoners from your colony will be released." A large screen activated behind him. Images appeared. Human civilians in containment. Families. Children. Mira's face did not change, but her eyes sharpened. "And if I fail?" she asked calmly. Karan answered without hesitation. "They will not survive." A murmur passed through the arena. High stakes, clear outcome. Karan extended his arm slightly. "Touch," he ordered. The entire chamber held its breath. Mira did not rush. She walked slowly toward him. Her steps echoed across the platform. Karan's armor systems hummed softly, energy layers activated automatically. This version of the armor had triple-phase stabilization, frequency drift protection, internal harmonic dampeners. Engineers had worked all night. They believed this was impossible to break. Mira stepped back one step away from him. She looked at the center of his chest plate again, but this time she did not reach immediately.
She closed her eyes. The chamber remained silent. Karan watched her carefully. No sudden movement, no trick, just stillness. Then she opened her eyes. "You overcorrected," she said quietly. Karan frowned. She lifted her hand, placed her palm against his chest plate again. 1 second passed. Nothing. 2 seconds. Nothing. Alien soldiers began to relax slightly. 3 seconds. Karan allowed himself a small smile. "See," he said loudly, "primitive chance." The sentence never finished. A low vibration began. Not sharp like before. Deep. Subtle. The red glow in his chest flickered. Not cracked. Flickered. Engineers in the control room froze. "That's not possible," one whispered. Mira's fingers adjusted slightly. Not pushing harder, just shifting position. The vibration intensified. Karan stepped back instinctively. "What did you change?" he demanded. Mira looked up at him. "You made it stronger," she said. "Yes." "That made it more rigid." The red glow surged suddenly. A thin fracture appeared across the chest plate. The crowd gasped. "No!" an engineer shouted into the comms. "Stabilizers at maximum!" The fracture spread sideways. Karan tried to step back further. Mira stepped forward. Her hand remained steady. "You don't design for chaos," she said softly. The armor screamed, a high metallic tearing sound. And then the chest plate exploded outward. Not as violently as before, but decisively. Shards flew across the arena floor. The stabilizers overloaded and shut down completely. Karan staggered backward, exposed again. The arena fell silent. No laughter, no disbelief, just fear. Because this time, it was not a flaw, it was proof. Karan slowly straightened, his breathing heavy, his pride wounded deeper than the armor. The prisoner's screen flickered. He turned sharply toward his officers. "Release them," he ordered. A pause, then confirmation. Prisoners released. Mira lowered her hand. The crowd of soldiers did not cheer. They did not move. They were thinking. And thinking soldiers were dangerous. Back in the command room, chaos erupted. "It's not force. It's not heat. It's resonance. She finds the instability point." An older scientist leaned back slowly. "She doesn't break the armor. She convinces it to fail." Silence. That sentence changed everything. Karan walked out of the arena without speaking further. His authority was still intact, but something had shifted. Alien soldiers now looked at Mira differently, not as prey, not fragile, as unpredictable, and unpredictability frightened structured empires. Mira was escorted back to containment. This time, the guards did not grip her arms tightly. They kept distance. Inside the chamber, she sat again, calm. One guard finally spoke softly. "Why didn't you run?" She looked at him. "Because you're still learning." He did not understand, but he felt it. In the wider galaxy, signals had been intercepted. Other species had seen fragments of the demonstration. Rumors spread beyond the alien empire now. Human destabilizes war armor again. Twice, cleanly, systematically. Questions began forming in places the empire could not fully control. If alien armor could fail, what else could fail? And the most dangerous question all, was the empire truly superior? Back on the warship, Karan stood alone in a private chamber. Broken armor pieces lay on a table. He stared at them, not angry, not shouting, thinking. "She said we don't design for chaos," he muttered. He slowly looked toward the stars outside the window. Humans evolved in chaos. Storms, conflict, division, survival. Maybe that was their advantage. Not strength, Not unity, adaptation under pressure. And if that was true, this war had just become much more complicated, because power could defeat strength, but power struggled against adaptation. And Mira Hale was only one human, which meant there were billions more.
The second armor failure did not stay inside the arena. It spread. Not officially, not in reports, in silence. Alien soldiers replayed the moment in their minds. Engineers whispered in corridors. Officers avoided direct eye contact when Mira was escorted past. The Empire had a problem, and the problem had a name: Mira Hale. Karan Vex stood before the High Tactical Council through a holographic projection. Massive figures appeared in red light around him, older commanders, war architects, strategists who had crushed civilizations long before humans discovered deep space. "You failed twice," one said. Karan did not argue. "Yes. You allowed a prisoner to destabilize Imperial armor. Yes. You released captives under her condition." Karan's jaw tightened slightly. "Yes." Silence. Then another voice spoke, colder. "Bring the human to us." Mira was transferred the next cycle, not to a cell, to a laboratory. The room was bright, sterile, circular. Transparent walls revealed observation decks above where scientists and officers watched from shadows. She stood in the center, unrestrained. That was new. A tall alien scientist stepped forward. "We will understand you," it said. Mira tilted her head slightly. "You could ask." The scientist ignored that. Machines lowered from the ceiling, scanners, field disruptors, energy mapping systems. "You will touch this," the scientist ordered, activating a small armor sample mounted on a frame. It was a fragment of Karan's redesigned chest plate, stronger than before. Mira looked at it, then at the observers above. "You think it's about my hand," she said. "It is," the scientist replied. "No," Mira answered softly. "It's about your assumptions." The scanners activated. "Touch," the scientist commanded. Mira stepped forward, placed her palm lightly against the metal. The room waited. Nothing happened. Scientists began recording data rapidly. Pressure minimal, temperature stable, no energy spike. Mira removed her hand. "You see," one observer said, "it was anomaly." The scientist narrowed its eyes. "Again." Mira stepped closer. This time she did not touch the center. She touched the edge, near a connection seam. 2 seconds passed. A soft vibration started. The seam cracked. The armor fragment split cleanly in half. Gasps echoed above. No force detected. No external energy. It's reacting internally. Mira stepped back calmly. "You keep building walls. You don't study the cracks." The scientist turned toward the observers. "It's not strength. It's pattern recognition." Mira heard that. She smiled slightly. The High Tactical Council reviewed the findings hours later. "She identifies harmonic imbalance in structural frequency," one scientist explained. "She senses it?" "Yes." "How?" "Unknown." Another commander leaned forward. "Is it unique to her?" Silence. "No." That word froze the room. "If this is human neurological adaptation, then it may not be rare," the scientist continued carefully. The commanders shifted uncomfortably. Billions of humans, all raised in unstable environments, war, weather, economic collapse, constant change. They did not build in stability, they built in adjustment. One commander spoke slowly. We are fighting a species that trains in chaos. Back in the laboratory, the tone shifted. The experiments stopped being demonstrations. They became pressure. Brighter lights, louder machines, longer sessions. They attempted to overwhelm her senses. Rapid frequency changes, flashing lights, sonic pulses. The goal was simple: break her focus. If her ability required calm pattern detection, remove calm. Mira stood in the center of controlled chaos. Alarms blared randomly, walls vibrated, lights flashed at unpredictable intervals. A scientist shouted over the noise, "Touch the structure now!" A reinforced armor frame lowered. Mira closed her eyes. The chaos grew louder, faster, disorienting. She breathed slowly. In. Out. The noise blurred. Patterns emerged. Random to them, rhythm to her. She stepped forward, placed her palm against the frame. For a moment, nothing. Then, the entire structure destabilized at once. Bolts snapped, panels split, energy nodes shut down. The armor collapsed inward like it chose to fail. The room went silent, not because machines stopped, because observers stopped speaking. One young technician whispered, "She's not fighting the armor." Another finished the thought, "She's listening to it." Above, Karan watched, not with anger, with realization. He remembered her words, "You don't design for chaos." He began to understand. The Empire valued control, rigid chains of command, perfect formations, precise systems. Humans valued resilience, flexibility, adaptation. The Empire crushed resistance through overwhelming force. Humans survived resistance through adjustment. That difference changed everything. Later, Karan entered the lab alone. The scientist stepped aside. Mira stood near the center, tired but steady. "You could teach us," Karan said. She looked at him. "You won't like what that requires." "Explain." "You'd have to let your soldiers question orders." Karan did not respond. "You'd have to allow instability during training." Silence. "You'd have to admit that perfection breaks easier than flexibility." Karan's eyes narrowed. "That is not how empires survive." Mira met his gaze. "Exactly." Elsewhere in the fleet, reports continued arriving. Human ships were adapting mid-battle again. Alien formations were becoming predictable. Human strikes targeted coordination nodes, not weapons. Disruption, not destruction. And something worse. Some alien soldiers hesitated before engaging human vessels, not from fear of death, from uncertainty. If a human could dismantle armor by touch, what could a fleet do with time? Doubt spread quietly, and doubt was more dangerous than rebellion. Because rebellion can be crushed, doubt cannot. The High Tactical Council issued a new directive. Human containment priority. No direct proximity. No experimental engagement. Avoid physical interaction. It was subtle, but it was retreat. Not in territory, in confidence. That night, Mira sat alone in containment again. Not in chains, not in pain, thinking. A guard approached cautiously. "You could destroy this ship," he said quietly. Mira shook her head. "No." "Why?" "Because destroying things is easy." The guard waited. "Changing them is harder." He did not fully understand, but he believed her. In the command chamber, Karan stood before a star map. Human fleets moving unpredictably, alien fleets adjusting too slowly. He realized something dangerous.
The war was no longer about weapons. It was about philosophy. Rigid control versus adaptive resilience. And the Empire had never trained for philosophical war. Karan spoke softly to himself. We built armor to stop force. He looked toward the lab where Mira had stood. But they learned to stop certainty. And certainty was the Empire's greatest weapon. If certainty failed, the Empire would not fall from explosion. It would fall from erosion. Slow, quiet, inevitable. And across the galaxy, rumors now carried a new phrase. Humans don't break systems. They make systems question themselves. The war was no longer escalating in fire. It was escalating in thought. And thought was much harder to contain.
The war did not explode louder after the corridor incident. It went quiet. That scared the galaxy more. After Commander Razek's armor shattered with a single touch, the footage spread everywhere. Civilian stations replayed it. Military academies studied it frame by frame. Even neutral systems watched in silence. A human girl, no visible weapon, one touch, and the strongest alien war armor ever built, broken. The Dominion High Command called an emergency session. "This is human trickery," one general growled. "It is a hidden device," another insisted. "It is sabotage." But their science division had already scanned the footage. "No device detected," the chief analyst said quietly. "No external weapon, no energy surge before contact." "Then what happened?" the high general demanded. The analyst hesitated. "The armor did not fail from outside force." The room grew still. "It failed because its internal energy system destabilized at the exact moment of contact." Silence. "You're saying," the High General said slowly, "the human disrupted it?" "Yes." "How?" The analyst swallowed. "We don't know." Far away, in a hidden human command center beneath Earth's surface, leaders watched the Dominion response. No celebration filled the room, only focus. Admiral Keene leaned forward. "Report from forward scouts." "Dominion fleets are regrouping," an officer replied. "They've halted direct assaults." "Casualties?" "Reduced, for now." Keene nodded nonce. "They're afraid," someone whispered. "No," Keene said calmly. "They're calculating." Because the corridor incident was not a battle victory, it was a message, and both sides understood it. Aria Vale stood alone in a medical observation room. Her hand was wrapped in a thin energy cast, not because it was injured, because scientists needed to study it. She flexed her fingers slowly. They looked normal, felt normal, but they were not normal anymore. Dr. Hahn entered the room quietly. "We ran more scans," he said. Aria didn't look up. "And?" "You're generating a micro-frequency pulse on contact." She frowned. "Like a weapon?" "No, like a key." That word stayed in the air. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means your body isn't producing force, it's producing resonance." "With what?" "With unstable energy fields." Aria finally looked at him. "Their armor," she whispered. "Yes." She leaned back. "So I didn't break it?" "No," Han said. "You made it break itself." On the Dominion flagship, Commander Razek stood in a reinforced chamber. His shattered armor lay in pieces on a table. He stared at it. "You told us human weapons were primitive," he said coldly. The Dominion scientist bowed slightly. "They are." "Then explain this." The scientist approached the fragments carefully. The human did not attack the armor, she exposed its weakness.
Razek's eyes narrowed. Weakness is eliminated. Not when it is hidden, the scientist replied. Razek turned away. This changes nothing, he said. We still outnumber them. Yes, the scientist agreed. But now they know how to hurt us. Across the galaxy, smaller conflicts shifted. Human ships did not charge into battles. They avoided heavy combat. They lured Dominion cruisers into narrow asteroid fields. They forced Dominion forces to activate heavy energy shields. Then, human operatives boarded. No explosives, no guns, just contact. Armor systems flickered, power cores destabilized. Dominion soldiers retreated from close combat. They began firing from distance. The Dominion had always believed humans were physically weaker. Now they refused to let humans get close. That fear changed tactics everywhere. Back on Earth, debates filled the Human Defense Council. We can't rely on Arya alone, one general argued. We're not, Admiral Keen replied. Her resonance ability is rare, but the principle isn't. What do you mean? Keen tapped a holographic display. Dominion armor schematics rotated in the air. Their entire military doctrine depends on centralized power systems. High output, high efficiency, high instability under the right frequency. A scientist nodded. They built for dominance, not adaptability. Silence followed. That sounded familiar. Arya was called into a strategy meeting for the first time. She felt out of place among admirals and generals. You didn't ask for this, Keen said gently. No, Arya replied. But you stood. She remembered the corridor, the civilians frozen in fear, Razek raising his weapon. She nodded. What do you need from me? She asked. We need understanding, Keen said. If your resonance can be studied, replicated. You want more like me, she finished. No, Keen corrected. We want systems that do what you did. She stared at the hologram of Dominion armor. They're strong, she said quietly. Yes, but they don't expect to be touched. The room went still. That was it. The Dominion built distance into their power. Humans built connection into theirs. Weeks passed, the war did not end, but it changed shape. Dominion fleets stopped overwhelming colonies with brute force. They fortified, they tightened formations, they minimized exposure, and that slowed them down. Human forces adapted faster. They targeted power nodes instead of hulls. They disabled rather than destroyed. They forced Dominion commanders to choose, overpower and risk collapse, or defend and lose initiative. For the first time, the Dominion was reacting. Razek stood before the High Command once more. Humans avoid direct battle, a general said angrily. They exploit weaknesses. Razek's voice was calmed. That is battle. We must escalate. Escalation increases instability, Razek replied. Every system we strengthen becomes another point they can disrupt. The chamber fell silent. You're suggesting restraint? Someone accused. I'm suggesting adaptation, Razek said. The word tasted foreign in Dominion language. Arya stood on a balcony overlooking Earth's night sky. Warships moved silently above the atmosphere. Her healed hand flexed. She did not feel powerful. She felt responsible. Dr. Hahn stepped beside her. They're calling it the corridor effect, he said quietly. She smiled faintly. I barely touched him. And the galaxy changed direction, he replied. She looked up at the stars. This isn't about me. No, Hahn agreed. It's about what they believed was impossible. Arya whispered the thought forming in her mind. They believed armor made them untouchable. And what? Hahn asked. And humans don't win by hitting harder. She clenched her fist gently. We win by getting close. Far away, Dominion fleets hesitated at the edge of human space, not because they lacked weapons, but because they no longer trusted their own strength. And that doubt, that single crack, was spreading. The war had not ended, but it had turned, and both sides knew it, because a human had barely touched an alien, and the armor that was meant to make him unstoppable had shattered.
The war reached a strange moment. Not louder, not bigger, quieter. Dominion fleets stood at the edge of human space again. Massive ships, heavy armor, endless weapons. But they did not move. Inside the Dominion High Command Chamber, tension filled the air. "We still have superior firepower," one general insisted. "Yes," another agreed. "One decisive strike, crush their core systems." Commander Razek stood in silence. He no longer wore his old armor. The shattered pieces had been archived as technical failure, but he remembered the feeling. Not pain, exposure. "They are not fighting our fleets," Razek said calmly. "They are fighting our assumptions." A younger officer snapped. "Then we change tactics." Razek turned slowly. "We are changing who we are." Silence. That was a dangerous statement in the Dominion. The High General stepped forward. "Humans are weaker physically. Their ships are lighter. Their numbers smaller." "Yes," Razek said, "but they survive. And we dominate." Razek looked at the star map glowing in the center of the room. "For how long?" he asked quietly. No one answered, because the truth was clear. The Dominion had won almost every major battle, but they were losing control. On Earth, human command gathered again. Casualty numbers had slowed. Dominion assaults had reduced. "Intercepted transmission," an officer reported. "Dominion High Command debating full retreat." The room froze. "Retreat?" someone whispered. Admiral Keene folded her hands. "No," she said. "They're debating something worse." "What's worse than retreat?" "Admitting they were wrong. Because empires do not fear defeat as much as they fear humility." Arya Vale was summoned again, this time not to study resonance, but to send a message. "You're sure about this?" Dr. Hahn asked quietly. She nodded. "If this continues, more die. And if they reject it?" She looked at her hand. "Then we endure." A broadcast channel was opened, not encrypted, not hidden, direct to Dominion High Command. Razek himself accepted it. Arya appeared on the screen. No armor, no weapon, just a human in simple uniform. "You escalated," she said calmly. Razek did not interrupt. "You believed strength meant control. You believed fear meant stability." Silence filled the Dominion chamber. "You can keep fighting," Arya said. "You will win battles. You will destroy cities. But every time you do, we learn." Her voice did not rise. "And every time we learn, you lose certainty." A general growled. "This is weakness disguised as philosophy." Arya met his gaze through the screen. "No," she said softly. "This is math." The word confused them. "You can destroy 10 of our ships. We build 11 more. You can burn one world. We evacuate and rebuild 2. You can armor every soldier. We learn how to touch the armor." Razek's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, human?" Arya did not hesitate. "Stop trying to be untouchable." The room shifted. She continued. "You fear vulnerability. We survive because of it." A long silence followed. Razek asked quietly, "And if we refuse?"
Arya answered simply. Then we outlast you. Days passed without response. Dominion fleets remained in formation. Human fleets held defensive lines. The galaxy watched. Neutral systems waited to see which side would break. Inside Dominion territory, unrest grew. Resources stretched thin, supply lines disrupted. All because the Dominion had built for dominance, not flexibility. Finally, the Dominion High Command gathered one last time. We cannot continue this war without internal collapse, the chief analyst admitted. Our systems are too centralized, our doctrine too rigid. The High General clenched his fists. Then we double force. Razek stepped forward. And shatter ourselves faster? Silence. He looked around the chamber. For centuries, we believed power meant distance. He remembered the corridor, the human hand on his armor. You know what truly shattered that day? Razek said quietly. It was not my armor. It was the idea that we cannot be reached. The chamber fell completely still. That idea is gone, he continued. If we escalate, they adapt. If we retreat without change, they grow. There is only one path left. The High General whispered. You would bend to them? Razek shook his head. No, I would learn. A Dominion fleet moved again, but not towards Earth, towards a neutral negotiation station. Human Command received the signal. Dominion requesting ceasefire dialogue. The room exhaled slowly. Admiral Keen looked at Arya. You stood once, she said. Now we all stand. The meeting was simple. No threats, no grand speeches. Just two species facing reality. Razek stood across from Arya. No empire has ever admitted structural weakness. Then you are the first, Arya replied. He studied her carefully. You changed the direction of this war. She shook her head. No, you did. He frowned. How? Because you hesitated. That was the truth. He hesitated in the corridor. He hesitated now. That hesitation allowed change. The Dominion agreed to cease expansion warfare, agreed to restructure power distribution, agreed to shared oversight in border systems. Not surrender, adaptation. The galaxy watched in disbelief. The unstoppable Dominion had adjusted. Not because they were defeated, but because a human proved they could be touched. Back on Earth, celebrations were small. No parades, no loud victory, just relief. Dr. Hahn found Arya standing alone again, watching ships move peacefully in orbit. You ended a war. She shook her head. I didn't end it. What did you do? She flexed her hand slowly. I reminded them they're not untouchable. He smiled slightly. That's a dangerous reminder. She looked up at the stars. Only to empires. Far away, in Dominion academies, a new lesson was added. Not about overwhelming force, about resilience. And in human history records, one line became famous. She barely touched him. And an empire realized armor does not protect you from change. That was the real HFY. Not bigger guns, not stronger ships, but the courage to reach forward and prove even giants can be reached.